All right, get your note cards. Put your name on the top of them. There's going to be a pop quiz. I'm just kidding. Am I a teacher? No, I'm not. You don't have to put your name on it. That was a joke. But next week there will be a pop quiz, so. Oh my gosh. Yes, Mr. Figget. Well, you need to go to the bathroom again? No, it's your third time this period. Is that how that usually goes, Tanner? Yeah, I figured. Oh, man. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We are glad that you guys are here tonight. I don't want to sound partial, okay? But I have been looking forward to this series and our next series, which this series is 5 weeks long. Our next series is 14 weeks long. I've been looking forward to these two series literally all year long. Like I've just been, and I love all the messages. I love what God's done through all, but I literally have just been like excited about getting to here because I'm excited for this moment. As we talk about for the people in the back, anybody ever felt left out? Anybody ever felt like they were the back row dude? Okay, that's not a shot at the fifth row people. Don't take that personal, I promise. But I'm sure at some point in your life, maybe you felt like, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there, like maybe at some point you're like, I just don't feel like church is for me. Like we said, like I don't feel like that, like I should be the one worshiping. That's not my style. I don't really like his teaching. Everybody else is like, I love his teaching. I'm not a fan of him. Anybody ever had that teacher at school that everybody's like, they are the best teacher, but you're the one kid who's like, no, they are not the best teacher, right? Like, and it's like because the teacher has it out to get you, right? I was that kid. I always felt like every teacher was out to get me. I don't know why. It's almost like I was the common denominator or something, but it was definitely their fault. But this whole series is called For the People in the Back, and it's specifically to those who you come to church or you've been to church or you know of church, but you continue to think like, not my style, not my thing, not with my time. And we, for different reasons, we think that church is the first. I'm going to go and step away from church. We just think that God, period. God is not for me. Because of things that have happened in your life, because of situations that have taken place, because of things who people who go to church have said to you. You're like, well, if they're a Christian, I don't want to go where they are. Okay? And depending on things that have happened in your life, you don't even think like, I don't want to go to church. You just start to think, I don't want to know God. I don't want to be around God. And I'm not surprised to hear that if that would be any of y'all's opinions, because I had so many friends in high school who, with or without an invitation, they were not going to go to church. They had been hurt by people who claimed they went to church. They had been offended by people who said that they were a Christian. And so they kind of had this distaste in their mouth of, I have no interest in being there. And some of you tonight, maybe you're here and you're like, I'm just here because mom and dad make me come. I'm just here because a friend, a brother, a sister, an aunt, somebody brought me here and I'm here and it's going to blow an hour and a half of my time, an hour of my time. And I'm really just looking forward to dinner that's afterwards. But I'm here. Yeah, whatever. And if that's you tonight, I get it. Okay, because I had a best friend who that was his thing. He went to church because I invited him to church, but he really didn't have a lot of interest in church. And it's because of previous hurts from people in the church. And so I'm excited for this series because if you have a friend that's like not a fan of church, bring them to church in the next 4 weeks. Because this is literally, we're trying to mend some bridges here and show you who God really is. Okay? Which is what we do, I hope, every week. But this series is points right, that for the people in the back. Sometimes we feel like we're the person left out, the person in the back. Tonight we are talking about the title of tonight's message. You want to title your note card, your journal, your page, your whatever, your phone, your app, your notes. The title of tonight's message is For the Rejected. For Mr. Figget, the title of tonight's message is For the Rejected. Any other questions, Mr. Figget? No, sir. Nothing? All right. Let's hop into it. Anybody here ever felt rejected? Anybody here ever been rejected? Like straight up, like you just got the no. Yeah. Some of you are probably like to a girl, like you got the no from a girl. I'm not talking about that. Anybody ever been rejected from a team or from a group, from a job, right? The job application, they're like, no, not you, somebody else, right? You're like, how can I get, okay, here's the crazy thing. I've been rejected before. I know, hard to believe. I've been rejected. I got rejected by Chick-fil-A. Which I really thought was the one place that hired everyone. I mean, I've seen some Chick-fil-A workers. I'm like, if he has a job, I get the job. I was You got a job at Chick-fil-A? No, he had a job at Chick-fil-A. How did I not get the job? That's my point. Chris had a job at Chick-fil-A. You got a scholarship from him? My point exactly. I felt like I was the only person in the world. I was a junior in college. I had just been that whole school year. I'd worked as an intramural referee, and I would referee football and softball. And it wasn't the worst, but Maddie did it for a little bit. It's just you get those people who think that you're always wrong. And I might miss 1 or 2 calls, but there's no way I miss 100% of my calls, all right? There's just simply no way. But I was always wrong as the referee, right? Same way that teacher is always wrong. I was always, and so to get out of intramural referee, I was like, one day I was at Chick-fil-A, and they had a sign that said, now hiring, and in my mind, I was like, why have I been working there? I would work every night as an intramural ref, and then I would go to Chick-fil-A and eat dinner. And every night I walked past the sign, now hiring, now hiring, now hiring. And then one night I had an epiphany. By the way, it was not the one with Sodexo, because that would have been atrocious. It was the one out there on Ward's Road. And Maddie still has nightmares about Sodexo. It was this one off campus, and they had a sign out. And every night after I got off work, I would go to Chick-fil-A and pass this now hiring sign. And one night I had this light bulb moment. What if I just stopped going to Chick-fil-A to eat food, and I just went there and worked there? And I remember sitting in the drive-thru line that night thinking like, it can't be that hard. I'm like watching people working inside the window. I'm like, that doesn't look too bad. Just stand on my feet, pack a bag with the 12 packs, some French fries, hand them their sweet tea, and they're out the door. My pleasure, right? That's all I got to do. And the occasional strawberry apple salad or something like that, right? You just got to budding, my pleasure, right? That's all. My pleasure. That's all I got to do. My pleasure. Like that. If I just say my pleasure in the interview, I'm granted the job, like guaranteed. Not to mention, I'm a Bible student. Like, I'm Chick-fil-A's golden token. Like, how could I? And so I go, and That's why you didn't get it. Yeah, probably. They saw how terrible I was. No, so I go into Chick-fil-A, and I sit down in front of this lady. She was the sweetest interviewee I've ever had. Nothing against Calvary. But this little old lady was like, what's your name, darling? And I was like, my name's your next employee. My name is Matthew Jacobs. And she was like, okay, Matthew, how old are you? And I was like, I'm 21. She's like, that's awesome, Matthew. What are some things that you like to do? I'm like, play video games and sleep. And she's like, okay. What kind of video games? I'm like, you know about video games? I'm like, let's have a full-blown conversation. Like, me and this lady at Chick-fil-A are hashing out. She goes, well, Matthew, how much would you be able to work? I'm like, whenever you want. I get out of class every day at 2:30, and I don't have to be back on campus until midnight. But I do like to get dinner with my buddies, and I do like to be off on the weekends so I can catch the football games. I'm a pretty avid football fan. And I also, if there's a Vacation Manor concert, I'll probably ask off for that. And she was like, oh, okay. And I was like, why is she not so sweet anymore? Like, what's the beef here? And so we go through the whole interview. I'm sure I didn't get the job because of that part of the whole interview right there. I go through the whole interview, and she goes, Matthew, it was so great having you. We will let you know in the next day or so if we have accepted you. I was like, that's awesome. I can't wait for the acceptance letter. Nobody gets a denial from Chick-fil-A. So I am pumped. There's no way I can fail. 3 days go by. I'm like, she said a couple of days. How have I not heard? So I'm like, all right, 3 days. Be patient, Matthew. She's just writing a really great acceptance email for you. I mean, she is customizing this probably for you. It's not just like a basic field set. Like, she's putting some stuff in. And it's like, all right. 4 days go by. I'm like, okay, this is twice as long as a couple. What's taking so long? The 5th day, I'm so antsy. I'm like, I need a job, and I'm tired of listening to these kids yell at me. I'm just going to call her. Right? Maybe she just forgot to send it, and I just got to check up on it. And how good of me to check on it, right? Because that'll show them that I really care about it, that I really want it. So I call Chick-fil-A. And guess who picks up? This sweet old lady. I don't even know her name. This sweet old lady picks up. Hi, this is Chick-fil-A on Ward's Road. How can I help you on this day? And I was like, hi, my name is Matt Jacobs, and I came and interviewed with you guys a few days ago, and I never got an acceptance letter a few days, like you said it'd take a couple days. I never got anything from you guys, though. I just want to follow up and figure out if I got the job, and if so, and I'm like, I got the job. And I'm like, I'm just trying to figure out if I got the job, and if so, when do I need to come in and start? And she goes, oh, yeah, Matthew, I'm sorry to let you, we ended up not accepting your application, but we do appreciate you coming in and interviewing with us. I'm not going to lie, I remember the rest of the phone call, because I could not believe I'd been rejected by Chick-fil-A. I'm a Bible student, for crying out loud. How do you reject me? I'll say my pleasure all you want. Maybe I didn't say my pleasure enough in the interview. I don't know. I just don't understand how I didn't get the job. And And I go and I walk into Chick-fil-A and I'm like, that's it. I'm boycotting Chick-fil-A. It lasts about 24 hours. I was really hungry. I couldn't believe that I'd been rejected. And some of you, you've been rejected. And after your rejection, you go through this series of emotions where you start making very rash decisions, like I'm going to boycott Chick-fil-A. It has not proven true in my life. But we begin to make these decisions about who we are, who we're going to be, what we're going to do, what we're going to say based upon the rejection. And this isn't, the most interesting thing about this is that in life, we typically define, this is proven scientifically, we typically base ourselves in life upon who we are not versus who we are. Listen to how crazy that is. It is known scientifically, psychologically, we grow and we base ourselves, we base who we are based upon who we are not. You want to talk about a pessimistic way of thinking. Rather than building my identity based on who I know I am and based on who I know loves me and who I know accepts me, I base my identity on what I'm not and who doesn't love me and who doesn't want me. What a backwards way of thinking. And what we're going to have to realize, and I'm actually not surprised to see that this is common thinking for students nowadays, considering that is the world's pattern of thinking, and considering how much social media, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Threads now, what in the world, based upon how much of that you guys consume, if you consume the world, it would only be right that your thinking is going to be of the world. If the world is going to have a pessimistic mindset and you're going to consume a lot of the world, it only makes sense that you're going to think the way the world thinks. And so I'm here to challenge you tonight. I'm here to challenge what you consume. And tonight we are going to talk about the fact, we're going to talk about the rejection of this world and the invitation of the Father. The rejection of this world and the invitation of the Father. Here's the big takeaway tonight. If you just check out right now, you want to leave and just walk out, here's what I want you to understand. The Father invites each and every one of you. The Father invites you to draw near to Him. God the Father, the Creator, He invites you to draw near to Him. If you have your Bible tonight, we're going to be in Genesis 37, 39, 41, and then we're eventually going to make a huge flip over to Luke. But we're going to start in the book of Genesis tonight and talk about a man named Joseph, the son of Israel. And so tonight we're going to start in Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. The verses will be up here on the screen, hopefully working. They are working. Look at that. Hey, Chris, go to the next one. We're golden. All right. If you want to follow along with the verses on the screen, they'll be up here. I'm going to read through them, and we're going to break them down as we go through them because we got a lot to get through tonight. Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. It says, "So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often attended, he often, am I NLT? Is this NLT? Oh, it is. It's NLT. Okay, sorry. All right, we're good. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flock. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things that his brothers were doing. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age of his favorite wife, Rachel. Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin, so Joseph being the oldest son of Rachel. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had made a special gift for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them, and they could not say a kind word to him. All right, we just asked the question a while ago, who in here has ever been rejected? All right. The favoritism that Joseph's father showed towards him over the other 11 brothers drove them to so much anger and frustration that they hated their own brother. Joseph was not rejected by Chick-fil-A. Joseph was not rejected by the dance team or the football team or the soccer team or the band or the choir. Joseph was rejected by his own brothers. Just for a moment, imagine a 17-year-old young man. Many of you are near around past that age. Imagine the rejection of your family, your siblings, your brothers. He's rejected by his own family. And to be honest, some of you may bring traumas from home, hurt from home, and you may relate close to this. But because of things happening at the house, you feel rejected within your own family. And you sit here now, you're like, this sounds like way too familiar to me. Well, if this sounds like your story, hang on, because you're going to see the work of God through Joseph's story. As we continue reading on down here, you jump all the way down. If you continue to read the story, we're going to jump over a little bit of scripture here. I'm not going to read all 47 verses to you tonight. We're going to jump down a little bit further. I'm going to summarize. Essentially, Joseph's brothers grow to hate him because of the favoritism. Well, the hatred grows a little bit more because Joseph begins having these dreams. It's these dreams of him being at the center of his brothers and his brothers bowing down to him. Can you imagine if your little sibling was like, hey, by the way, you can be bowing down to me. Like I had this dream, God gave me this dream, and the dream was this: you're going to bow down to me. Like as an older sibling, you'd be like, what are you, shut your mouth. There's no way I'm bowing down to you. And Joseph then comes back a few days later and is like, hey, I had another dream from God. This one not only said that you were going to bow down to me, it said that mom and dad were going to bow down to me. And of course, I'm sure the siblings are like, dude, you're obnoxious. Like you got that little sibling, you're like, dude, just stop talking. There's no way. Okay, well, there's hands going up. There's no way. I'm not bowing. And so because of their hatred from the favoritism and now their hatred from the dreams, Joseph's brothers begin to make a plan. Genesis chapter 37, verse 17. Go down a little bit with me. Verse 17. Yes, the man told him. So Joseph's at the house chilling with dad. And then his dad's like, hey, Joseph, go see what your brothers are doing. I'm sure they're being a bunch of knuckleheads. Go see what they're doing. Joseph's like, okay, dad. And Joseph goes out to where they're supposed to be. He's like, yo, where are my brothers at? And this dude named Dothan's out there. And Dothan's like, oh, hey, by the way, your brothers are not here. They're at a different field. And Joseph's like, but they're out here. And he's like, yeah, go to that field. So you pick him in verse 17. It says, yes, the man told them, they have moved on from here, but I heard them say, let's go. They're moving on to them. Dothan's not the person. They're moving on to Dothan. So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. Verse 18, when Joseph's brothers, listen, we talked about this hatred. Look at this here. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. Here comes the dreamer. Imagine the sarcasm in that. Hey, look at, there he comes. Here comes the one that tells us we're going to bow down to him. Here comes that good old dreamer Joseph in his colorful cloak that our dad made him. Look at him. Here he comes. Here comes the dreamer. Verse 20, come on. Let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We can tell our father that a wild animal has eaten him, and then we will see what becomes of his dreams. The wickedness of the heart, the hatred of the heart, so strong, so distasteful. They say, our brother, we hate him so much. He is so favored. He says that God has given this dream that we're all going to bow down to him. Let's just kill him. Let's just get rid of him. Let's just kill him. And so it goes on. The story progresses, right? And in verse 20, he says, let's just kill him. He progresses down to verse 26, and it actually gets a little bit more wicked. Go down to verse 26. Verse 26, Judah says to his brother, what will we gain by killing our brother? Then we'd have to cover up the crime. Judah's like, hold on, let's not kill him. I don't want to be a murderer. That's too much. Then we'd have to cover up the crime. Verse 27, instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And so they all agree, like, you know what? You're right, Judah. You're a genius. Let's not kill him. Let's just sell him. Let's just get rid of him. So in verse 20 it says, so when the Ishmaelites who were Midianite traders came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern. By the way, they were like, hey, we're going to kill him. Let's shove him in the cistern. So they shove him in the cistern. And then while he's in the hole, they're like, well, if we just leave him in the hole and he dies, we don't get anything out of that. And then we're murderers. I don't really want the blood of my brother on my own. Okay, hey, what if we just sell him? Hey, Joseph! Hey, when these Ishmaelites come by, we're going to pull you out of there. You're going to go with them. Like imagine Joseph in the hole. Like, what in the world? My brothers are selling me? Continues on. So when the traders came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and they sold him for 20 pieces of silver. And the traders took him to Egypt. Imagine this, the rejection again. The rejection continues to grow. There's such a hatred that they realize that killing him, I don't want to kill him, but I want to profit off of the disappearance of my brother. I don't just want him to disappear. I don't get anything out of that. I can profit off of him. Thank you so much. I can profit off of him if I sell him. Let's make something out of it. I'm not just going to make it. I get nothing out of him. Let's make money on our brother's head. They chose to sell him. Imagine Joseph in this moment. Imagine Joseph in this moment hearing that his brothers, what they were going to do and with him. Yet, might I say that God was with Joseph through it all. Now jump with me to Genesis chapter 39, verses 1 through 5. It says, Joseph has been sold, Joseph is in Potiphar's house. Chapter 39, verse 1, it says, when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything that he owned. From the day that Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All of his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. Joseph facing rejection, God says, I'm with you the whole time, Joseph. Joseph, look to me. Joseph, find your contentment in me. Joseph, continue to seek me. And in the whole time, Joseph is being rejected by his brothers, by his family, being threatened to be killed, being sold off. God says, look at me. Look at me. Don't look somewhere else. You look at me. And God's hand is there over Joseph's life the whole time. Point number one, if you're taking notes, point number one. The enemy wants to wound us with rejection so that we will abandon the Father. The enemy wants to wound us with rejection. So we'll abandon. He says, hey, let's go. Some of you right now, you're like, okay, I got a school year coming up. I want to get in a different friend group. I don't want to go back to the same old same. I want to be different. I want to live a bold, contagious Christian life. I want people to know that Jesus loves them. I want the world to know that Jesus has come for them. And then we go over there and we start our first conversation. Hey, my name's Matt. I want you to know that Jesus loves you. And maybe that's not how you start the conversation. Maybe it's like, hey, my name's Matt. What do you like to do for fun? Right? But you get into the conversation and say, hey, you want to go to church sometime? I go to church every Wednesday. You want to come to church with me sometime? And they go, no. Satan wants to take that no and make it a never. He wants to make it a never. Because what Satan wants to do is he wants to take it, he wants to manipulate that rejection and say, you should never do that. You know how stupid you look? You should never do that again. Why would you stick your neck out for God? Why would you do that? That's so stupid. And now you're getting made fun of. You asked somebody to go to church, they said, no, you should never do that again. Satan wants to take what is a minute wound and say, now you should just abandon God forever because God, you know how foolish you look, you know how silly you look doing that? You should just abandon God. Satan wants to use the rejection to create abandonment. We look at Joseph here, and to be honest, too frequently we find ourselves overwhelmed, flipped over, misguided by the lies of the enemy. The enemy wants, we've said this before, the enemy, Satan, let's go ahead and define who the enemy is because I'm not going to talk ambiguously all night. Satan is the enemy. Biblically, Satan cannot tell the truth. It is literally impossible for Satan to tell the truth. So the next time that you feel like Satan's like speaking to you and distracting you and trying to lie to you, he literally can't tell. So when Satan says, hey, your best idea is to abandon God, by the way, that's probably the absolute worst idea possible because it's a lie. There's no truth in the enemy. There's only lies. So why would you listen to somebody who has it out to get you? And so you look here, and it's not surprising that our lives feel like they get flipped over, turned upside down, like we get overwhelmed. We get overwhelmed with pressures and anxieties. Yeah, because you're listening to the lies of the enemy. Satan wants you, listen here, Satan wants you to abandon God. That's what he wants. If Satan can get you to do that, Satan doesn't have to worry about your friends knowing Jesus if he can get you to stop chasing God. Satan doesn't have to worry about your friends knowing Jesus if he can get you to abandon God. Right? Because as the believer, we're supposed to be the light to the world. He takes out your light. What about the people around you? How are they going to get light if you are not seeking the Lord? Some of you might be like, I feel like I have this target on my back. You do. Wow. You do. As a believer of Christ, you do have a target on your back. Scripture says, you will be persecuted for my name because I was persecuted for my name. That's Jesus speaking. Don't be so, you're like, I feel like it's all against me. It's because Satan is against you. But you know what your greatest weapon of that is? We just sang about it. I raise a hallelujah. that worship would be a weapon against the adversary. My weapon is a melody. And when I fight the adversary, I'm going to go to worship. Because when I go to worship, I call on God. And my weapon against this enemy who wants me to abandon God is God. I got to hurry up. I'm going to keep you guys here till 9 o'clock. You continue reading on to the story. We're going to jump way ahead now to Genesis chapter 41, where the story picks up. If you want to read tonight as you go home, you're going to realize that from Genesis chapter 39 to Genesis chapter 41, there's some stuff happening. Joseph ends up in Potiphar's house. He does excellent there. Potiphar's house is exceedingly great because Joseph is in there and the Lord is blessing Joseph. So whatever is under Joseph, the Lord is blessing, right? Well, then Potiphar's wife is like, Joseph's apparently a pretty hot dude. Like, apparently she had it out for him. And so she tries to tempt Joseph into sleeping with her. And Joseph's like, look, you're my master's wife. I'm not going to sleep with you. That's so disgusting. I'm not going to do that. Well, one day she catches him. She grabs him by the cloak. Joseph realizes what's going on. Joseph's like, I don't want to talk to you. So Joseph runs away. As he runs away, he leaves his cloak in her hand. And she's like, perfect. I got evidence. Joseph tried to sleep with me. Potiphar's like, what a wicked man. Send that man to jail. So Joseph gets sent to jail. While in jail, you know that thing that Joseph did earlier where he was interpreting dreams? Well, he begins interpreting dreams again in jail. Joseph sits in a jail cell. And Pharaoh begins having these dreams. And none of Pharaoh's astrologers, none of Pharaoh's wise men could interpret it. But there was this man, this cupbearer, who had been in jail with Joseph and was like, wait a minute, last time I was in jail, there was this dude that interpreted my dream and it came true. Hey, Pharaoh, you should call him. Pharaoh's like, go get that dude out of jail. I want to meet him. Can he interpret my dream? And that's where we pick up in Genesis chapter 41. Joseph has interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, and Joseph responded, both of Pharaoh's dreams mean the same thing. God is telling Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do. The 7 healthy cows and the 7 healthy heads of grain both represent 7 years of prosperity. The 7 thin and scrawny cows that came up later and the 7 thin heads of grain withered by the east wind represent 7 years of famine. This will happen just as I've described it, for God has revealed it to Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do. The next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout the land of Egypt. But afterward, there will be 7 years of famine so great that all the prosperity will be forgotten in Egypt. Famine will destroy the land. You go back in there just real briefly, and you realize in verse 28, Joseph's like, hey, by the way, I got this wise thing. Like, listen to me. He's like, hey, by the way, this is what God has revealed. This isn't me. This is what God has revealed. Joseph realized this is God working through him. This is God opening a door for Joseph to serve and to glorify him. Joseph said, this is what God has revealed to Pharaoh. Not what I've done. This is what God has revealed. Joseph relies on the Lord speaking through him. But not only does Joseph not only interpret the whole dream, but if you keep reading, he actually shares wisdom with Pharaoh. In verse 39, just a few verses down, in verse 39, he says, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has revealed, Joseph interprets the dream. Then Joseph tells Pharaoh, hey, by the way, you should, in those 7 years of great prosperity, you need to stow away. You need to fill up all the grain houses. You need to fill up all the stockyards, because in those 7 years of famine, we're going to need all that storage to feed the people of the land. So he does. And so Pharaoh, in lieu of this knowledge and this wisdom that God has given to Joseph, Pharaoh says, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one is as intelligent or as wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a higher rank than yours. Again, we see this blessing of God the Father here over Joseph's life. Joseph being in a position fully reliant on God. God says, I'm going to use you. And then God uses him. God says, and now I'm going to lift you up. I'm going to exalt you in your position. You're going to be known because you've allowed me to work through you. And so God gives Joseph this platform, and still in this platform, Joseph's like, okay, how can I glorify God from here? I've got a higher chance. And you go down to Genesis chapter 41, verses 41 through 43. Pharaoh says to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. You want to talk about a blessing that God has over Joseph's life. Right? I think sometimes in the middle of rejection, we feel like that's the end. That's where it stops. The friendship, the relationship, there's a rejection. That's where it stops. It can never progress. It can never go further. It can never be more. It's over. The team, the job, you get rejected. It's over. It's there. It's the end. Maybe even church. You feel like you've been left out of a group. You feel like church isn't for you. You feel like God is against you, and you feel rejected. And you think it can never go further. But here's the thing. If you will seek after the Lord is seeking after you. And if you will seek after him, he says, come to me. I want to use you. I want to work through you. And so he desires that we would come to him so that he could use us, so that he could put us in a place where we would have a platform that glorifies him and not ourselves. And so we look here, he says, Pharaoh gives Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. This is a big deal. Then Pharaoh removes his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothing and hung a gold chain. Joseph had the drip, hung a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in a chariot. Joseph's just like pimped out right now. Then he had Joseph ride in the chariot reserved for his second in command. And wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, kneel down. So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. Point number 2 tonight. You're taking notes. Point number 2. The Father walks with us through our rejection. The Father walks with us through our rejection. And I really kind of want to highlight this word right here. Through. Because I think there's a lot of times we end up in the middle of rejection, we end up in the middle of loss, we end up in the middle, and this is going to be relevant as we talk for these next few weeks. We get rejected, we feel hurt, we feel broken, we feel insecure, we feel overwhelmed, we feel anxiety, we feel frustrated, we feel a loss, at a loss. And what we have to know is that in the middle of those moments, in the middle of those feelings, in the middle of those emotions, God is not there, but like floating near, like, oh, hey, if he was like, God wants to walk through that moment with you. And some of you really need that tonight. It's the stuff that you bring in from home. It's stuff that you bring in from mom and dad. It's stuff that you bring in from relationships. It's stuff that you bring in from the friend group. It's something that you bring in from social media. It's something that you bring in from your past. And you say, I'm stuck in this. And here's the crazy thing. God wants to be with you in that moment to bring you unstuck and to bring you back to him. Joseph never turned his back on the Father. Rather, when the obstacles grew bigger, Joseph turned quicker to God. The enemy, we talked about at the beginning, the enemy wants you to abandon God. Joseph said, I will never abandon, I will just look greater to him. And I challenge you tonight, some of us, as you face things, and the question maybe in your mind, I'm going to be done with church. I'm just going to be done with this whole religion thing. I'm just going to be done with Christianity. I'm just going to check out. I've tried it. It's not my thing. And don't abandon the one who is for you. Run to him like you have never run to him before. Surround yourself with a community who will lead you to that relationship in Jesus. God desires to walk with us. He never leaves us. It's us who leave him. The Father invites you to draw near to him. And lastly, I'm going to work through it real quick. I know I'm already over. Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 20. The prodigal son. I'm going to read through this real quickly. It'll be up on the screen if you want to follow along. To illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, this younger son packed all of his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all of his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. Goodness. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs with looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. Finally, when he came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants had enough food have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired hand. In verse 20. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. Let's break this down real quick, and we'll get out of here. Verse 16. A lot of us are at verse 16. Go one more slide over for me, Chris. A lot of us have gone out. We have squandered the blessings that God has given us. We have squandered the opportunities that God has given us. And we've gone out searching for food. We've gone out seeking in the world something to fill us up, something to satisfy us. And you know what happens? When you go into a world seeking to be fed, you get nothing. No one gave him anything. You don't know why the world didn't give him anything? Because they had nothing to give. Because they're in the exact same spot as him. High to high. They are going from temporary high to temporary high, and everything in between is desolate. You know why the world had nothing to give him? You know why the world gave him nothing is because they had nothing to give him. Because the only one who gives life is Jesus. Continue on. Go down to verse 20 with me real quick. So he returned home. And I ask some of you tonight, you looking to return home? Continuing in verse 20, it says, while he was still a long way off. This is the most beautiful part. Oh, goodness. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Some of you are not home. Some of you are not with the Lord. Some of you are not seeking your relationship with the Lord right now. And God is like sitting on the front porch just looking. When will my child come home? My child whom I love, whom I care for, who I am so deeply infatuated with. When will my child come home? As this father sits there. Because the father was looking, the father sees him a long way off. And the most beautiful part, he ran to his son. He embraced him. And he kissed him. Point number 3 of the night. The Father welcomes us home. The Father welcomes us home. Some of us, we've been rejected and we've run the wrong way. We've ran away, we've ran to the world, and I need you to know right now, the Father is looking off the porch waiting for you to return. He is on the porch sitting there waiting for you to come home. And he welcomes you home. He doesn't say, oh, not you again. You? No, get out of here. You've turned your back on me too many times. I can't love you again. Joanna, I was talking to her earlier tonight, and she said something that she has always reiterated over and over. Joanna, how long have you been serving students here? 7, 8 years?
Teens, 8 years. Little ones, about 4 years before that.
Joanna was telling me earlier tonight, ever since she's really been in here with the teens, she's always reiterated to you guys over and over again, you can never do something so bad that God loves you any less. You can never do something so good that he's going to love you anymore. Because his love is already abundant and overwhelming. It can't be increased and it can't be decreased. You're his child. And so because of that, when the Father sees you coming home, the celebration begins. He welcomes you. He's not afraid of you. He doesn't want you to stay distant. He wants you to come home. So I have 3 questions for you. Well, I have a lot more than 3, but 3 points. The head. Head, heart, hands. Head. Which way are you running? So worship team comes forward. We're going to close with worship. I have some questions. Don't pay attention to them. Pay attention to me. Which way are you running? Let's start with that one. Where are you going? You chasing God? You chasing the world? Are you running towards God or are you running away? And I think you already probably have a pretty good idea in your heart what that is for you. You can probably answer that. You don't have to tell me out loud. You don't have to just start shouting answers. But are you running towards God or are you running away from God? Heart. Will you turn to the Lord now that you know that he's waiting for you to come home? God sits there tonight. He is waiting on some of you. Some of you right now are on the verge of just like offering your whole life over to the Lord and just like, I'm done with the world. I'm done with the drama. I'm done with the media. I'm done. I just want Jesus. I just want to come home. I just want to come home. I'm so fed up with the short-sightedness of this world because they have nothing to offer me. I've tried it. I've tasted it. And I am back here hungry again because they had absolutely nothing to give me. So will you come home? And then lastly, because some of you maybe you're like, well, I feel like I'm running in the right direction. I do. I feel like I'm chasing God. So what does that mean for me? My question for you, who around you is running the wrong way? Oh, that gave me goosebumps. Ooh. Who around you is running the wrong way? Do you love them? Do you love them? Bring them home. Bring them home. Be the light of Jesus. And when the enemy says, you gotta, oh, I got goosebumps. When the enemy says, you got to get out of there, that God is not for you. You run greater to him than you ever have before. This ministry has grown and grown over the last few months. It's beautiful. You know why it's grown? Because students said, I'm done with the world. I want Jesus. And not only do I want Jesus, but I want my friends around me to have Jesus. Who around you is running the wrong way? Will you bring them home? As we are led in a closing song of worship, another in the fire. Some of you right now, you feel like you're in a pretty big fire. Whether it be something at home, it be a mom and dad situation, it be a brother or sister situation, it be a situation involving school that starts here in a few months, it be a situation that involves a team or a club or an activity or an event that you want to be a part of and you didn't get to be a part of, you missed out or you feel like you're left behind. For the people in the back, I want you to know Jesus is so far for you, it's not even funny. The Father wants you to come home so greatly. And so whatever it is for you, Jesus walks with you, and he wants to meet you there. So as you stand and our worship team leads us in a closing song, if you want to talk, maybe you want to accept that gift that Jesus offers tonight, you want to have a conversation, you want to talk, meet us in the back. We've got adults that would love to share with you what Jesus has already done.